it's so anyway, and then I will talk about some of the things about our family that are really wonderful, and then some things that are disturbing.
Well, okay,
this is gonna get good.
It's all about Barbie.
Okay.
That's a weird term.
All right. Well, let's get it going.
Well, we're excited. Yeah, we could jump in, and I'm elated that we are doing this. So thank you all for being willing to play.
Yeah, same. Nice to meet you all.
Yeah, it's nice to meet you all. Awesome. All right, so we'll start with the random facts. For the random facts, Rachel, do you want to go first to set it up? Or random fact, we're shortening it because we have so many people. And then we'll just kind of go through the line and you guys can see how it works. And Rachel, I'm asking you to go first because I didn't think of mine yet. So
okay, got it.
So we'll have Rachel go, and then we'll kind of just go down the line, and then we'll have you do it twice, just so we have options for audio recording, just in case anything gets funky or internet can always be an issue. So that's why we have you do it twice. Sound good? So we'll have Rachel go first.
Hi, I'm Rachel, and my new obsession is long, slow walks in nature. Hi, I'm Rachel, and my new obsession is long, slow walks in nature.
Okay. Hi, I'm Allison. I'm a professional woman, but a loving mother of 3. Hi, I'm Allison. I'm a professional working woman, as well as a loving mother of 3.
Hi, I'm Kaity. My favorite thing to do in the world is just to run with no limits and no end. Hi, my name is Kaity. My absolute favorite thing to do is to run without limits and no end.
Hi, my name is Barbara. I have lost my 2 husbands this year, which has changed my life.
Say it again.
Hi, my name is Barbara. I have lost both my husbands this year, which has changed my life.
Hi, I'm Jenell, and I like peanut butter and salami sandwiches. Hi, I'm Jenell, and I like peanut butter and salami sandwiches. Perfect, we did it. I'm like, mine is so lame compared to y'all deep. I'm like, I like sandwiches.
Sounds really good.
It sounds really good.
I think I'm going to try that.
It is really good. It's sweet and salty. If you're into sweet and salty.
Or you just stick the salami in the peanut butter.
Oh yeah.
I've been doing that too.
Well, I think I told you this when I was driving the other day. I had a long trip and there's nowhere to eat. So I bought gas station bologna and I had a jar of peanut butter. It was it was disgusting. I was like, I can't believe I'm doing this. And dipping my fingers in the peanut butter because I didn't have a spoon and eating the gas station bologna. And I was like, this is a new low. But it was actually pretty good. So. Well, oh my gosh. Welcome everybody. I am so excited to have you all here, and I know Rachel is too. We've been planning this for quite some time, and this was probably even in 2019, wasn't it, Rachel, where we were like, we want to have multiple generations because a lot of our guests are kind of close to our age or within a similar generation. And we had, I think, posted on social saying that we were looking for people with cool grandparents and cool parents. And Katie's like, I got one of those. So we're finally making it happen, which we're really excited about, because we've had quite a few conversations on the podcast previously around how I think a lot of the wisdom of generations older than us just haven't been acknowledged properly or have even potentially been lost, and that's something that we want to be able to highlight, and I think we're going to get to do that today. So I'm actually going to just jump into introducing you guys, if that's okay, And then from here, we'll kind of briefly just like jump into the family, dynamic and
Oh boy.
get into our conversation. So Rachel and I both know Kaity actually from SPIRE Fitness. If you're a listener of the podcast, we've had many guests from SPIRE on, but Kaity you're actually the cycling program manager now, yeah?
I am 5 years. I just had my 5th year teaching anniversary this week.
So 5 years teaching cycle program manager at SPIRE Fitness. And I just love, like, one, I can't even believe that, because I remember you were probably one of the first people that we put through the training program, weren't you? Like you were.
There was no training program.
Yeah, there wasn't really. Training.
Yeah.
Training program. We're like, come teach. And Kaity has just been like an absolute joy to work with. I feel like you've always just been super receptive to feedback, but you brought your own like personality. And even from an instructor standpoint, like I've always just loved your classes because your music choice is on point, and you just bring like this very fun, and in the spirit of this podcast, like very authentic energy that like you're you when you're up there teaching. I feel like sometimes, and not right or wrong, but sometimes when people teach, like people like really step into their persona. And I feel like your teaching persona has always truly been Kaity, but just, maybe slightly like elevated for a stage, but it's always felt like it's you. But then we also have Kaity's mother, Allison, and I'm going to read the bios for this one. So Allison, born and raised in Milwaukee, and has always ventured down the road less traveled as one of the first female tour directors at Live Nation Global Touring, which I feel like I've heard so much about. So I'm excited to finally meet you too, because like all of these like backstage experiences that Kaity shared and on tours, so super exciting there. But one of your biggest acts was supporting your children. And after the global pandemic sidelined concerts for the foreseeable future, Allison leaned in and rediscovered what it's like to live life outside of backstage. So welcome. And then our next guest, this is so fun. Come on down, Barbara. So Barbara is a lover of art, a good book, and her 13 grandchildren plus 2 great-grandchildren. And Barbara has spent 25 years as an elementary school teacher at the university school in Milwaukee, living a spiritual life without limits. Barbara spent her time after her career wandering the halls of art museums around the world, found another level of inner strength after losing her daughter to breast cancer, and renewed her vows with her first love for the second time.
Wow.
She's also living the definition of YOLO. I love that.
You're the living definition of YOLO. You only live once.
Yes. So welcome to the podcast, family.
Thanks for
Welcome.
Thank you very much.
I'm so excited to have you here. So why don't we just jump in? Normally we kind of ask like, how did you get here in a very brief version, but like maybe this like we'll switch it up a little bit with the family here. And how did like just kind of maybe introduce your family to anyone who's listening, because obviously I know it's a very big story and question, but just like kind of in a short and condensed version, and then we can continue to have that unravel as we and continue the conversation.
I can start with that. Our family, we just recently had a memorial for my father, who was Barb's second husband, and for Jim, who was Barb's first and third husband. And we have such dynamics in our family, but the one thing that we have within our family is that we respect and love each other. And we can have we used to have random dinners where it would be Barb, my stepmother, my dad, my mother's mother, my ex-husband, and Kaity's dad, all around the same table. And we actually had to come up with an org chart for everyone, which we should have sent to you. But we wanted to have this for all our family, and all the grandchildren either took a picture or going to frame it and said that this is going to help so much, because our family just weaves, and the dynamics are insane. But the one thing, and I think what happened is I learned from my mother and from Barb And my kids learned from me that no matter what happens, you put your children first and you make sure that the relationships continue, no matter what path someone may lead on. And it's really important to show love. And if there was any discretion, it would be done privately and not in front of the children.
That's amazing. I love that org chart, by the way, too. That's so cool. So when, I guess, like, just kind of jumping in to the conversation on 3 generations, and I'm curious, and I know we'll get to it, but a lot of, as I had mentioned, what sparked this conversation, having it, is the knowledge and the wisdom that all the generations have, and to carry that on and share it with their children and their grandchildren. And things always evolve and they change, but I think it's really important not to forget the lessons of the generations before us. So with asking or stating that, I guess, is there something that you all would like future generations of your family to know and remember?
Do you want to take this one?
Well, the thing that's the most important to me is that, well, first of all, I have always said, everybody in our family stays family. We are always family. And our family has taken a number of very different turns. But the focus in our family, whether the children and grandchildren realize it or not, has always been God is at the center of our family. And in whatever way they believe that, or however they think about that, it is part of their family. It is part of their life.
Yeah. I think as far as our future and knowing what the past, the current generation of you and Katie are, and the generation that nothing like this has ever happened to previous generations. So what we, the older generation, has to guide the future generation is to take it, take your wisdom, but also open your mind, because I can't tell Katie, it's not like we've gone through a pandemic or we've gone through political situations that are current. But you just need to focus and not be afraid. And the biggest thing is not be afraid to ask for help. I think that our generation and Barb's generation always just put it under the rug and ended up self-medicating or, doing other things or living a life that they couldn't stand because they didn't want to admit that there was issues. And I think this generation needs to embrace mental health and focus on making people in tune with their bodies, their minds, their mental states. And I found this on social media the other day, and this is kind of the epitome, what I want to tell the future generations, but it's a saying that says, you are personally responsible for becoming more ethical than the society you grew up in. So it's to take the negativity of the current situation and grow from that and learn and how to get rid of it and how to move forward in their own, because you guys have got a lot of work ahead of you because of previous generations. And I apologize for that.
Well, I don't think you should apologize for that at all, because as I was born in 1934, and so we were still living in the Depression, and life has changed for all of us so dramatically since then, and I don't think that our children and grandchildren have any notion about how really totally different it is now than it was then. And I personally right now believe that this very difficult time that our country and each person in this country is going through is because so many of the things that stayed hidden in the past are all come to the surface, and it's dramatically affecting everybody. And we're all beginning to see that every single human being on the face of the earth has their own personal way of coming to the truth for themselves. And that we need to, we can't open our ears wide enough to hear what people have to say authentically. And so it will take years and probably decades or even centuries to come to a new way of actually dealing with people, dealing with the world in a better way. But I think we're on a very exciting verge of that.
That's true.
Right
That is true.
Mm-hmm.
I love that, the question comes from, what wisdom do you have? Because I think I'll speak for myself, like, help me, be able to stand on your shoulders. And the wisdom that you just gave was actually so profound, because it was, yeah, you can stand on my shoulders, but really you need to figure out how to stand on your own. That's what I heard. And to do that, it is being able to be open to allowing each person to find their own expression, and to not have to have it be so rigid or hidden or trying to fit into some preconceived notion or predetermined formula. And wow, it's beautiful.
Yeah, I just see a lot of kids, like my friend has 2 teenagers, and with this whole pandemic, they have actually grown into more, introverted behavior. And I don't know if it's because they're afraid or they don't want to deal with it, but that's the whole thing, is we need to nurture them to become one of their own and not to rely on everyone. They need to come to grips and rise up.
Where do you think your family has gotten this sentiment? It seems very innate to your family. And where do you think that came from?
I mean, I definitely think from being somebody growing up watching both my grandmother and my mother, there's been so many things. Life has always been so good for so long, but then there's been so many roadblocks that came up, whether it was the death of a family member very suddenly, or a family fight that may have separated or added some tension. But we all learned that life is too short to dwell in the past and to become obsessed with these terrible things that happen, but really using them as a launching pad of what that next door you're going to open in life is.
Yeah. My personal experiences, these 2 know, but when Katie was like 13, when I moved, was about 13, I made the decision, and then my boys were even younger, 9 and 8. I made the decision to move from Wisconsin to Florida because
without us.
Yeah, without them. Because A, I didn't necessarily like the education in Florida, and B, I had no choice because my job had been dissolved. And it was the hardest decision I made, but it was a decision because you can say if mama's not happy, no one's happy, but it was a thing that I had to do. And what it ended up doing is opening up so much opportunity, not only for myself, but for my kids. And the only reason why I did this was because of our family network here in Wisconsin, between Katie's dad and my ex-husband, and
not the same people.
Yeah, and
people.
Barb and my father. I knew that my kids were going to be okay. And eventually I did move back, but it was a very hard thing to do. And I lost some friends because of it, because they didn't agree with me. And then when I went on the road, people were saying, well, how can you go on the road? You've got children. And I said, well, first, they're not attached to my breasts. They're older. And then I would go around the room and I would ask, Jonathan, how many kids do you have? And he would say 2. And then I go, Ethan, how many kids do you have? 3. And I'm like, what's the difference? Why are you, chastising me for being on the road when there's tons of people who are male that are on the road? So I was very much in a very male-oriented career. It has changed so much. My company has jumped to diversity and bringing women up, which is amazing. But it taught me that you've got to do what you've got to do, and sometimes it's going to be really hard, and you just need to make sure that everyone's okay. I mean, Kaity went all over the world, and but my kids never really got into the whole thing. Like, I'll never forget, we were sitting at the Bradley Center when I was a local here with Live Nation, and we were sitting and catering, and Kaity was doing her homework, and her stepmother, Susie, got all flabbergasted because the Backstreet Boys were in the dining room eating. And
Katie's doing my homework.
Katie's doing my homework, and Susie's like, "Oh my God, don't you see
Carter?
There's Nick Carter," and she's like, "And."
I'm like fangirling and I'm not even there. I'm just like, wait, what? You were in a room with the Backstreet Boys? I did meet Brian once, but anyway.
Sometimes you have to get out of that comfort level and that comfort zone. And I knew my kids were okay. I knew that they were going to be taken care of, and it allowed me to grow amazingly to the next level. And I was always there for them.
It's so funny. Right now, I'm having this realization that Allison and I have been on the same track all of our lives. Mm-hmm. And because I made that hard decision to leave my first husband, who was the best husband in the world and a wonderful father, but I was never in love with him. And I fell in love with Allison's father. And I knew that because Jim was such a wonderful person, that he needed to have a woman that really, really loved him. And so I decided I would do the hard thing, and it wasn't popular with anybody in my family because, oh my God, how are you leaving this? How can you're such a perfect couple. Well, why is it that you're breaking this up? And so I ended up marrying Michael, of course, and I knew he wasn't really the kind of husband I wanted, but I was really in love with him. Besides, I was 37 years old, and I really didn't have a career in front of me. How was I going to make any money to live on with these kids? So, and so my life, when I married Michael, my life flourished in a way that I had never imagined. I went to school right away. I got a wonderful job after school, and then it's so funny because if I hadn't left Jim, he never would have discovered the absolute love of his life and had a wonderful marriage with her until she died, and she died of cancer. But it's like that was a perfect marriage. And so, we often make decisions that are really wrong, or really decisions that we think everybody else knows we're just crazy to do this, which is the same thing Allison is talking about. And yet it turns out to be everybody's life flourished. Mm-hmm. And I always said to Michael that Allison was his greatest gift to me, because we went through a short but difficult time, and it didn't last very long, because then when Allison came back to live with us, Allison had determined how she could flourish with her father and me. And we just, from then on, we've always just had a really wonderful, very, very, very satisfying relationship.
May I ask?
You?
Oh, go for it, Rachel. No, you go first.
I was going to say, I guess for both of you or all of you, how did you get to the point where you were able to make the decision that didn't make sense for anyone else but you?
Well, with me, it was a lot of talking to Barb and my kids. I mean, they were a little bit too young. I leaned on my bestie, Natasha, but it was just a lot of I'll never forget being in that airplane and just sobbing and thinking, I made the wrong mistake. I made the wrong mistake. And so, I mean, to some point, I talked to God a lot, and, you know, not being religious, but just saying, help me, you know, I'm so afraid. I don't know if I made the right decision. But I always had that little piece, or that little voice in the back, honey, go for it, do it, and you can always come back if it doesn't work out. So it wasn't like it was a finite decision, but I needed to make that because I didn't want to be 70 years old, 80 years old and say, why didn't I do that?
And I feel the same way. And I think that Allison and I both made that decision because we knew women in the past had never had the opportunity to explore maybe what they came to believe in or wanted. When women used to get married when they were teenagers, when they were really young, and they were always dominated by the men they married in one way or another, some very kindly and wonderfully, but other times very, very badly. And I thought the same thing. I didn't want to be old and being unhappy with Jim for all the time. Whoops.
That's sorry.
So anyway, it's just been a wonderful journey through life.
Yeah. But the other thing is what I think what we're both trying to say is, especially for future generations, don't be afraid to put your foot in that water. Don't be afraid to open up your wings and fly. Just make sure that you're covered, and you know. I also don't want the future generations to just give up. Like, oh, I don't like this, I'm moving on. You know, to really look inside before you make a decision like this, but don't be afraid to spread your wings. It's only gonna open up more doors.
And I think we've been role models for our children. I think that they will do all those things.
Yeah.
And
Definitely.
my grandchildren now are becoming of age where they are asserting themselves in this world, and they are doing a great job of it.
Oh, thanks.
I was actually just going to ask that, Kaity, because it's beautiful modeling from both generations before you. And I was going to ask how you feel like that's impacted your life and the decisions you've made.
Well, I mean, for a while, I kind of just used both of their strengths to hide behind and be like, well, they'll take care of it for me, because that's just the kind of generation that we've lived in. We've kind of just waited for someone else to do it. But now, as I've become older and I'm in my early 30s, I realized I need to stop waiting for other people to do things for me. And it's time to essentially grow up in mentally, in career choices. Like, I had a few full-time jobs where I just did them because I knew I needed a job, but absolutely hated them. And I actually just went back to a job that I had previously that I always really liked, but then was like, but what else is out there? And just went and did another job that was so unsatisfying that I quickly went back to my job in nonprofits. And I just feel like now I'm at the level where I'm speaking up for myself a lot more. And I learned that from watching them. It may have taken me a while to do it for myself and just been like, Mom, can you take care of this? Grandma, how do I do this? But now I'm hoping that I'm being a good example for them, and I can start doing things for them to finally take a step back and work.
I want to just interject something about Katie.
Oh,
When because I spent a lot of time with Katie when she was growing up, and I wouldn't have been able to do that had Allison been here. And because Katie developed a real attachment to me and I to her. And so anyway, one of the things we did was when she stayed all night with me, I would read. We had a certain number of books that we had to read every night before she would go to bed. And then by the time that she was ready for kindergarten, it's like I was reading the books to her, and somehow or another I discovered that she could read. And she didn't want to reveal that to me. And but she loved the fact that I read to her. And she said, Grandma, I don't know if she said this or whether I figured it out, but anyway, she said, well, you wouldn't have kept reading to me if you knew I could read by myself.
Yeah.
That's a good analogy.
We're all pretty independent women when you actually realize it. And my daughter, who is in the mix, and she should be here too, but she was a very independent woman who was very dependent on her brother all the time that she was growing up, and then she flourished also.
Where do you all think that independence comes from? Is that just something that was inside of you? Do you think you learned it from each other?
That's a really good question.
I think it's in our genes. I truly think, my mother, Dorothy, who's not here, kind of did the same thing when she moved to Mississippi after my brother graduated and brought me, and she kind of made that jump. And then when I couldn't stand Mississippi and I moved back with Barb and my dad, she stayed down there. But we come from a family of educators. My mother is very involved in the diversity end of humankind to elevate them and bring out their causes. She was a teacher for UW Extension. Obviously, Barb was a lower school teacher and then a headmaster. But we've always had this, Barb would sit around the table every night and do homework. And, we just saw it. And it was just this thing of women, especially in the 70s, they were doing things. My mom was going to school. Barb was going to school, and we saw that grow up. But I think a lot of it, it's just within ourselves that we just said, I'm not going to sit back and do nothing and be, a good little housewife. Want to ruffle the feathers a little.
Well, I have always been independent. I've always been a person that I think gets along with everybody and follows rules. But as somebody said to me, a psychiatrist that we'd gone to for divorce counseling at one point, he said, you're a very subversive person, which meant you want things your own way. Because they'd said to me, you two, when Jim and I had divorce counseling, they said, well, you can move on to having a good marriage. And I said to him at the time, which I don't remember, but Jim remembered, I said, well, how good will it be? And because I knew it was never going to be as good as I wanted it to be. One of the reasons I married him in the first place, not only was he because he was so smart and so good, he had a mother that was kind of got to be my role model in life. She was a very, very caring, intellectual woman, very bright and very loving, and I always felt I followed her.
Oh, it's so cool. you guys are amazing. And I'm thinking about my own family, like generation, and on both sides, it is the same thing, like very, very strong women. And there's an and to it too. Like the modeling that I received definitely has had an impact on how easily or more difficult it's been for me to step into my rebellious nature, because I definitely have that, and I can see it in both of my grandmas. I only have one that's still alive, but she's 103, and she is just a spitfire. Yeah, she loves Dirty Joke Day, and so she calls me on the phone and tells me dirty jokes. But yeah, anyways, I think it's what I'm taking from this is the reminder that we can be independent and there can still be other things there at play, and the support system that you surround yourself with, whether it's the family that you were brought up in or maybe the family that you create around you, can play a really important role in that journey of playing with those two seemingly opposing parts of ourselves at times.
When you think about how many strong women there are in the world everywhere and how they're emerging, and of course, you can't help but think that men have kept women down in their place for all these centuries because they knew that women
We're better.
were not better, but they could do things
without them.
And in fact, when Allison's father divorced me,
We're taking that to another level.
That's another story
For another
But
day.
anyway, I had and I thought that it wasn't because we didn't love each other anymore, but he felt, I'm sure he felt, we never did talk about it, but my idea is that he just never felt that I needed him as much as the woman that he ended up with, ended his life with. And I think that's just so true. It's just that, well, and as soon as I got over being miserable about the fact that he divorced me, I just went on to have a wonderful time with all
Sure
of him.
did.
Oh, yeah.
and I would say, I love living alone.
I love living alone.
I love my life.
I love my life.
And then I ended up marrying my first husband again, which was really funny because that seemed like the thing to do, because we had always stayed friends and we were close. And he did know me. He had known me longer than anybody else, and so it was really easy to do that. And now he suddenly died, and it's like, well, here I am with my good alone life again. So it's, and I know I don't have that many years because I'm 86, so I don't have that many years
You've got
left. But I'm going to
500
make the
years
best
left.
of them. And I just have all these wonderful children around me, and I do have great children. So
Thank you.
and my grandchildren are outstanding.
Oh, thank you.
One of the things I want to just interject is because we have just had the funeral for both men, and there were 7 or 8 grandchildren.
Mm-hmm.
Now is it 7? I guess it was 7. And so at the luncheon afterwards, I asked all the grandchildren to say something about their grandfathers, and all of those kids had so much problem emotionally talking about them. They could hardly get their thoughts out because our family is so close that it's really an emotional family.
Go ahead, Jenell.
I was just going to say the closeness is really beautiful. I was actually going to ask a different question. So Rachel, if you had something to add to this, go for it.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I appreciate, you shared in the intro, losing those 2 men was like changed your life profoundly, I think is the word that you said. And I can feel it in how you speak to them and how you speak about, your life and how it was impacted with them. And so I am honored to be able to share that space with you. So thank you.
Yeah, and just to let you know, both men died within a week of each other. Like,
yeah, it was
two Wednesdays in a row.
Wow.
And what we did after each one is, we all came together, anyone that was in town and people that were super close to us came to our house, and we just had parties and we celebrated their life. And not, there definitely were tears involved, but we all shared some really great stories. And that's how I think, to lose two people in your life within 1 week is huge, but we all came together as a family to uplift everyone and put people on our shoulders to carry them through this.
I will say another little thing at the end here, because even though we are very, very close and we just feel that everybody belongs in the family, I have one granddaughter who has always been a problem for all of us. And so when I gave her...
This is forever online. And
I gave her $1,000 for her wedding. She recently got married just about a month ago. And she finally sent me a thank you note that I got that Friday. And she said, thank you for coming to the wedding and being there. But she ended up with a caveat. I don't feel part of this family. And there are people in our family that don't feel included. And I'm thinking that has a lot of that's we need to be thinking about how is it we make families, people in the family that have, for one reason or another, don't realize that they have separated themselves from us and miss the fact that they're not with us. And so I think that's a challenge for us. And I also think that's also what's happening in our country. We have people in our country who have felt left out and disregarded. And we have to figure out a way to make people feel that they belong, because there's many, many people in this country that love being here, but feel that they are always told that they really don't belong or that they're not welcome. And I think that's a challenge before us as families and as a country. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I hear in that it can be, these are my words, but it can be easy to, when you feel a part of it, you feel the goodness, and to not necessarily look beyond that. And there is an invitation to absolutely do that, both within our family structures, our communities, and much bigger.
Our family is definitely not perfect. We talk about the love, but we have some issues.
Yeah, we definitely have issues that we need to deal with, and they're the same kind of personal issues that are also cultural issues, and every country has really the similar kind of issues to deal with. How do we make the people that feel unincluded included?
I appreciate that you all acknowledge that, though, because I think so many times in family structures, it's so much easier just to, and you could compare this to society too, but just sweep it under the rug and just be like, it's fine, nothing's happening here, we love each other, it's great. So I just have an appreciation, because I think that probably contributes to how close you all are, because you address the tough things, you have the tough conversations, and you don't just let them go. So I just wanted to call attention to that, because I think it's really beautiful.
Thank you.
Barbara, I'm curious, if you don't mind me asking, before we started recording, you had mentioned that you felt something, I think was disturbing. Was that the word that we used, disturbing in the generation? So I'm curious to continue this thought.
I spent a lot of time this morning. I always read the New York Times in the morning and have coffee, and it's gotten to be the way I start my day. And I didn't even have time to read the New York Times because I couldn't stop thinking about, well, you know, you need to take what Sarah said seriously. How do we make each other feel? And there's no doubt that has separated herself in some way or another, but fortunately she's found a man that she's very happy with. But how do we make her feel it good? And maybe we won't succeed at it, but we need to keep that in mind.
What were you going to say, Kate?
Oh, I was just going to say, yeah, I mean, I guess for you, who always just assumes that all of us are happy and taking care of life, because this family is so strong, I guess it would be pretty almost disturbing for you to realize that there was somebody who was on the outside looking in and seeing all of our super close family photos, us taking vacations, and just feeling like they're not a part of it and not being a part of something that you assume that you'll always be included with. So it's kind of
well, there's my brother too that's somewhat in the same thing as Sarah, but Wisconsin, Milwaukee is really the nucleus of our family, and a lot of Barb's sons live out in Idaho and New York, respectfully, and then it's how they choose to interact with everyone. And I think maybe they didn't make an attempt to be a part of the family thinking that they lived too far away, but there's other means. I mean, I remember, my mom always saying, oh, you've got to call your grandma or your grandpa. And I'm like, oh, whatever. And then guess what? One day they're gone. And I used to say that to my kids all the time, especially about my father. You really need to see him because one day you're not going to be able to pick up the phone. So it works both ways. I mean, I know that my brother only called when he needed something or if he was sad. But we need to, and they need to interact and take that step in their own hands, I guess, too.
That's true, too.
I feel like this is a family therapy session.
I know.
I
hope that other people hear this and, maybe go, yeah, maybe I do have to call my grandmother, my brother, my whatever. And I hope this helps people realize that nobody's perfect. No family is perfect. I mean, our family is far from that. But accept it, the quirkiness and, the things and apply it to your life, just.
Well, we do accept most of the quirkiness, but there's quirkiness that we don't really appreciate or accept. And those are the kinds of issues that we need to face. And we will, and we'll be better for it. And maybe we'll be an example for other people, who knows?
Yeah, I mean, what you're representing in your family and your vulnerability and sharing it so openly is it starts within our worlds, within our groups of people. And there are parallels to this, even though it is really specific to your family. There are parallels to other families, to collectives, to our country, and your ability to show your relatability, share the journey. It's possible for us to talk about this is hopeful. I mean, I hope it's hopeful for me as I look at my own family, and sometimes it can feel overwhelming to look at what's happening in the world and be like, what can I do? And to see the parallels within our own world, you're representing that so well right now that it really does start right with us.
Well, we always hear about, people are always saying, you know, you need to listen. You need to listen. Well, we haven't figured out what it means to listen. And I mean, we do from time to time, but as a society, and Americans are so freaking independent about what everything they, you know, they want. I think maybe all people today, they have a new expectations of maybe having more happiness than had been had in the past. But we have to listen to one another, and so far, we're not really very good at it.
And it's weird because Barb went through the Depression and through, you know, World War II and things like that. So she has those experiences that she can share with this generation. Myself, the only thing that really has impacted my life drastically is, of course, 9/11. But that's something that's totally different in a way. And you know, so I don't have the experiences that Barb had. And so I look at this generation and go, you guys are, I feel so sorry for you. I'm so sorry, you know, with climate change and pandemics and, you know, them getting out of college and not being able to get a job. And it's just, but the thing is I need to be there for them and hold their hand and make suggestions, but this is a world that I'm not used to. So I'm thinking the generation of Barb's age really needs to step up and, you know,
Help our generation.
help this generation. And I hope I don't have to go through this again.
Oh God, no.
You know, whatever. And I always said, you know, everyone's always like, oh, don't you want to be a grandma or something? And I'm like, at this point, I'm fine with 2 dogs because we got to figure this world out, because we need to make sure that the unborn, the people, the kids, the grandchildren that I eventually will have a life and a world that understands them and brings them whole. So no pressure.
Oh God, yeah, okay.
I give thanks every day for the washing machines in this world, because the way people used to have to do their laundry was just absolutely atrocious.
And
I love that so much. As someone who has been doing my laundry in a kitchen sink recently, I agree. Well, this is clean, right? So I am curious then, and Barb, you can politely decline or pass. And we've been talking about it, but as you think of everything that's just been happening in 2020 for our generation, what do you think we should know? What's your thoughts and your wisdom that you would like to bestow on us?
I think I see lots of, it seems like this country has too many people who don't appreciate history, because every country's history has some really bad things about it, but you can't not appreciate the good things because of the bad things that also went in each person's life. When you think about the saints in the world that we appreciate or we think are so wonderful, they were probably really a thorn in the side of their whatever community they lived in, and they also had done some really, really horrible things. The church is a great example of doing horrible things in the world, and so nobody in this age has the right to think, oh, we're not going to make those terrible mistakes, because we'll have our own set of terrible mistakes that we make that will affect the future of the world also. So we just hope that there's more things going on that are going to have good outcomes than bad outcomes. But we're really fortunate not to be, we've gotten through the 1900s that had 2 world wars, and we've come out of that, and it feels to me like those things aren't going to happen again. Now that may be really wrong, but I feel like we've learned a lot as we have more middle class in the world who wants a good life. They don't want to live with war all the time. And many countries have lived with way too much war.
Yeah. And my thing is, I think our generation, the one thing I've heard from Katie's generation is that the current education society or current education system doesn't teach them how to live.
Yeah, that's for sure.
They,
What's a mortgage?
what's a mortgage, finance, 401, retirement, which y'all have to save money in order to live once you're our age. But we have to teach them these life stories, these life textbooks of, how to do it. And it doesn't have to be like in a square. You can get out of the box, but, to take physics and economics is important.
Chemistry.
But chemistry, I mean, they need to revamp the education system to teach them life and life sustaining and how to survive in a world that with technology has gone through the roof. I mean, ask us how to do a Zoom call. We're like, what? But there's so much stuff that they need, that this generation and future generation needs to know in order to help them live.
Well, and also like emotional intelligence. How do I make a mistake? How do I learn how to build resilience or self-generated initiative, trusting my intuition,
Absolutely.
making decisions based on the long-term consequences, not just the short-term, quick hit. There's so much.
Yeah.
In school, it was like when you failed at something, when you made a mistake on this test of topics that don't matter, like the mitochondria of the cell cycle, you made a mistake because you couldn't remember one thing, you failed. Not saying that everyone deserves gold stars all the time, but there was just so much structured around don't mess up because you will fail. And that can transfer over into so many things if you were basing your life so much on books and on facts and all of that.
Well,
so
I think my generation and the younger parents of today are spoiling their children so badly. And I think it's out of guilt because they work so much. So sure, honey, I'll get you that computer. You can have, that phone or whatever. We need to rear back on that and not feel guilty and tell them to do their chores and, because it gives them a sense of responsibility instead of doing everything for them. Okay, I'll do your laundry. Okay, I'll do this. I mean, because you need to know how to be responsible for your life. And I think that and it's the fault of the parents that they're just giving up and giving in.
Well,
So.
we do need leaders in this world that will lead compassionately and intelligently. And right now, the world has a lot of really faulty leaders and who are causing a great deal of havoc with their own people. So we
This is
still have a
bipartisan.
whole long way to go before. But when you think about how much wisdom there is in this world, and it is being shared, and it's available to us.
mm-hmm.
When you think about Galileo, who was excommunicated from the Catholic Church because he made the mistake of making some disclosures of the way he saw the world happening, and he's only been pardoned by the Catholic Church in the last half century. So it's like, I hope that now when we do make mistakes, they get understood sooner than past generations who were on the forefront of what was happening in the world.
Beautiful lesson. We talk about that a lot, and I think I said just in a past podcast episode, like I want to fail and I want to mess up and I want to celebrate the messiness that is life, because it is. I mean, Kaity, just like you said, I mean, that hit very hard for me. I mean, my education was the same. It was like, you can't mess up. You don't want to fail. Strive for perfection, strive for 100%, strive for A's. And if you're not doing that, then somehow you're not doing your life right. And that's, I feel like now trying to take that and look at it in a completely different way and say, like, I want to get it as many F's as I can, but know that I'm growing from it, right? That I'm taking the risks and I'm jumping and I'm messing up and learning from it, but hoping, as you all had mentioned, that people can forgive that and see it as something that's admirable versus, well, you're just a failure, you know, and you didn't do anything right. But that we can actually celebrate failure. And that's like a world and a society that I want to live in. But as we be mindful of time, as we transition, I'd be curious, we'll ask our final question, but I'm kind of curious, as you all look to your future for each generation, what are you most excited about? Like, what are you looking forward to?
Oh boy. I guess we can start at the bottom. I'll go first. I mean, I'm just looking forward to so many more people getting a chance to live a life that they may have previously seen that was unattainable. Right now, we're living in a society where it's like, speak your mind, grow your mind, take that leap, and you can do whatever you want. You don't have to base your life off of the generations behind you. You are now your own person. And I think it's just been really powerful to hear so many people find a voice and really not care what other people think about it, and to think that we're going to be raising children with that mindset of like, don't be afraid to speak out. Don't be afraid that to say no or to say yes is going to breed a very strong group of independent people who can take us to some really great places.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to when there's a world where there isn't hate against humanity, because if you're raised by parents that have a certain opinion on certain races or something, that's how you grow up. That is, you're enveloped by that, and you just innately just accept that as correct. And I think with the future generations, the further we go, the less of that hatred is going to be prevalent in society. And I'm just waiting for that, where there isn't a hate because of skin or diversity or anything like that. That's a thing in the past. That's what I'm so looking forward to. And I hope that I'm alive, that is going to be down to almost gone.
Well, I'm sad that I'm going to run out of life before some of these problems get figured out. So, but it's funny that the closer you come to the time, the end of your life, the less fear you have for it, because you know, we're right now, those of us in our 80s are in the process of realizing that we're not going to live very much longer, and you're going to miss some of the things that are going to be happening, and that's and I feel bad about that. But also, death is not the scary thing that it is when you're younger, and that's very comforting. It's very wonderful to think about, and to know that God is mystery, and that when you die, some of those mysteries that God is are going to be revealed to you, and because God is not revealing. No matter how hard a church tries to figure out God and to try to own God and try to understand God, it's not going to happen. And it's not going to happen until perhaps when you die, although I have no idea what's going to happen then. But, you know.
Nobody does.
Nobody does, because the mysteries, you can think you can see a glimpse into the mystery, but that's all you get is a glimpse.
So remember, everyone, call your grandparents.
I love it. I love that lesson. As someone who no longer has grandparents.
My kids have been wonderful to me. I have never felt left out or disregarded as the way I sometimes felt I had done with my own grandparents.
Beautiful.
So
Our
these-
last,
You're really doing a good job.
Thank you. Mission accomplished.
our last question that we ask our guests is, how do you live your true north? So true north being your authentic self, your most full expression of you, in one word.
Confidence.
Oh boy, this is tough. How do I live my true north? Limitless. Limitless. I'll say it with a little more authority and confidence.
I think just appreciating.
One word. One word.
All right, I'll say appreciation.
Yeah.
Limitless appreciation and confidence.
Oh my gosh, that was so funny. Appreciation, one word. Appreciation.
You all are amazing. Thank you so much for being willing to play with us.
I'm going to change it.
Oh,
I'm going to say
she's 86. She can do what she wants.
thankful.
Totally.
Thankfulness.
Thankfulness.
Love it. Thank you guys. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us.
Yeah.
Awesome. Let's talk again.
Yeah, you guys are
I
love
love that.
I have 3 beds.
Yeah.
You can come and stay anytime you want.
You know, watch out. I am homeless right now. So.
True.
Well, no, man.
We're only 3 people out of this big family with lots of ways they think about things.
That is true. Oh my goodness. Well, thank you all so much.
Yeah,
We really
thank you.
appreciate it. And Kaity, I'll definitely let you know. Well, actually, I think Rachel's going to be back in Milwaukee too, so we'll have to
Yay.
try to meet up. Thank you guys. Enjoy the rest of your morning.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.